The train arrived in a cloud of dust and hesitation, as though even the iron beast sensed that something fragile stood waiting at the edge of the platform. Caleb Turner had faced droughts, cattle rustlers, and the silent grief of burying both parents before he turned 25. But nothing in his quiet ranch life had prepared him for the moment Eleanor Whitmore stepped down from that train in a pale blue dress, clutching a single suitcase and looking at him like he was both her salvation and her greatest uncertainty. She wasn't what the town had expected when they heard Caleb, the shy, church-going rancher who barely spoke above a murmur, had ordered himself a bride through a catalogue from back east. She wasn't timid. She wasn't small. She had eyes that had seen storms and survived them, and when those eyes met his, something inside Caleb, something he had kept locked behind work and prayer, shifted. The townsfolk lingered, pretending to adjust hats or tie horses, waiting for awkwardness. What they got instead was silence so heavy it felt sacred. Caleb removed his hat. Eleanor studied him carefully, as though measuring the kind of man he might become in her life. "Are you Caleb Turner?" she asked. He nodded. His throat felt tight. "I am." Her gaze softened just slightly. "Then I suppose I am your wife." The word wife struck him like a church bell, echoing across the prairie. He had imagined this moment 100 times, but imagination had never included how fiercely alive she would feel standing inches from him. The wagon ride back to the ranch was quiet at first, the sky burning orange above fields that stretched forever. Eleanor finally broke the silence. "You don't talk much, do you?" Caleb swallowed. "Not unless it matters." She smiled faintly at that, but there was a tension in her fingers as they twisted in her lap. That night, after supper eaten politely across a wooden table still smelling of varnish, Eleanor stood by the small bedroom window, staring at the endless dark prairie. Caleb lingered near the doorway, uncertain, heart pounding like a runaway colt. He had never so much as kissed a woman. His life had been responsibility, survival, and scripture. Marriage had been a practical decision born of loneliness he barely admitted to himself. Eleanor turned to face him, moonlight painting her expression in silver. "Back home," she began slowly, "men made promises they never kept." Caleb's chest tightened. "I don't make promises lightly." She studied him again, searching for cracks. "Do you even know what a husband is supposed to be?" He flushed. "Honest to a fault," he answered softly. "I'm learning." She stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell lavender and train smoke woven into her dress. Close enough that his pulse roared in his ears. And then she asked the question that would echo through his bones long after the night ended. "Can you make me come tonight?" The words were not crude. They were not mocking. They were fragile, vulnerable. Beneath them lay a deeper meaning. Can you show up? Can you be present? Can you prove I didn't cross this country for another disappointment? Caleb froze, not because of desire alone, but because he understood what she was truly asking. She wasn't demanding performance. She was asking for certainty, for safety, for a man who would not vanish when things became real. His voice trembled when he whispered, "I don't know everything, but I will not fail you on purpose." Something in her expression broke, not in disappointment, but in relief. No swagger, no false confidence, just truth. That was the first night they sat side by side on the edge of the bed, talking instead of rushing, talking about fear, about loneliness, about what it means to belong to someone when you've survived alone. Outside, coyotes cried into the dark, but inside that small ranch house, something steady began to form. Not fire, not yet, but the spark of trust. And sometimes trust is far more powerful than passion. As dawn threatened the horizon, Eleanor rested her head gently against Caleb's shoulder. "Maybe," she whispered, "that's enough for tonight." And Caleb realized that being a husband might not begin with proving himself in grand gestures, but in staying, listening, and daring to grow. If this story is already stirring something in you, if you believe love should be about courage and vulnerability instead of bravado, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because this prairie tale is only just beginning. By the second week, the town had begun whispering. Mail-order brides were not new to the territory, but something about Eleanor walking through the general store with her chin lifted and Caleb beside her, awkward yet unwavering, gave people something to talk about. Some expected scandal. Others expected heartbreak. Caleb expected only one thing, that he would not become the kind of man Eleanor had fled from. The ranch demanded long hours. Sunrise meant saddle leather and dust. But now every task felt different because someone waited at the end of the day. Someone who watched him not with judgment, but with curiosity. Eleanor surprised him. She learned quickly. Burned biscuits turned into golden loaves. Hesitant horseback rides turned into confident gallops across the fields. But there were still moments when shadows crossed her face, memories she did not fully speak of. One evening, after a brutal storm tore through the property and Caleb worked himself raw repairing broken fence posts, he returned to find Eleanor sitting by the fire, staring into flames like they might offer answers. "You push yourself like you're trying to outrun something," she said quietly. He hesitated, then admitted, "I've spent most of my life trying to be enough." She stood and crossed the room slowly. "Enough for who?" The question pierced deeper than he expected. He looked at her, really looked at her, and understood. She had asked him that first night if he could make her come. What she had truly wanted was partnership, not perfection. "For you," he confessed. Eleanor reached for his hands, rough and blistered. "Caleb Turner, I didn't come here for a hero. I came here for a man who stays." Her words settled over him like rain over thirsty soil. That night there was no fear in her voice. No test. Only closeness built from weeks of shared meals, shared silence, shared effort. The intimacy between them was no longer a question hanging heavy in the air. It was a natural extension of trust, carefully built day by day. When she leaned into him, it wasn't desperation. It was choice. When he whispered her name, it wasn't uncertainty. It was devotion. And in that quiet prairie bedroom, what passed between them was not spectacle. It was connection. The kind born from honesty, from restraint, from two people deciding they would not repeat the mistakes of their pasts. Months later, when Eleanor laughed freely while hanging laundry under an open sky, Caleb realized something powerful. Becoming a husband hadn't required knowing everything on the first night. It had required growth, courage, and the humility to admit he was learning. The town stopped whispering eventually, because nothing scandalous happened. No dramatic collapse. Only steady love unfolding like wildflowers after rain. And sometimes the most powerful stories are not about instant passion, but about two wounded people choosing each other every single day. If this chapter moved you, if you believe real strength lies in gentleness, if you crave Western stories where love is earned and not forced, then subscribe to the channel now. Because out here on the prairie, every sunset carries another story of redemption, resilience, and romance waiting to be told. And the next one might be even more powerful than this.